Welcome to the Marketing AI Sparkcast, where AI meets modern marketing. Hosted by Aby Varma, a global leader in marketing, AI, and innovation, each episode brings you real conversations with leaders putting AI to work in strategy and execution. This episode is brought to you by Spark Novus and the Marketing AI Pulse community. Here's your host, Aby Varma.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Marketing AI Sparkcast. Super excited. Happy New Year. I don't know how long we can keep saying that, but I'm going to say that for this January episode. We are going to do something different with this podcast in 2026. We are obviously going to continue the industry and the MarTech leader conversations that we've been having all this time, but we are going to introduce a new episode every month, which is going to track what is actually happening across the world of marketing and AI. And we are calling these episodes Marketing AI Pulse, which is a natural extension of the Marketing AI Pulse community. For those of you who are not familiar with it, we at Spark Novus host the Marketing AI Pulse community, and you can learn more about that at marketingaipulse.com. Well, I can't do this alone, so I have a friend and my partner in crime who is going to co-host these episodes with me, the lovely Matt Cyr, who is the founder of Loop AI. Matt and me also collaborate at Spark Novus. Matt is MIT Sloan certified AI strategist. He's got lots of hands-on experience in leading digital marketing and AI initiatives across major industries in healthcare and higher ed. Matt, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Aby. This is great to finally make it to the big time here. I feel like I've arrived.
I don't know about that, Matt, but tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, my friend.
Yeah, you got it. Very glad to be here. Yeah, my name is Matt Cyr, and I founded Loop Consulting in 2024 after having spent really my whole career, as you mentioned, in healthcare and higher ed, and then actually working for an agency supporting those two industries. And I, like a lot of folks, including yourself, caught the AI bug a few years ago, took that MIT Sloan course that you mentioned, and came back to the agency I was working for at the time, really with sort of a new enthusiasm for what's possible with these new technologies. But I really needed help sort of focusing on what was possible with them, what was not possible. And so I have spent the last few years really getting to know these technologies and really trying them all out. You know, I have spent a lot of time working with clients and with each other to understand this tech and what it's capable of. And so Loop really is meant to be a place and a way to help others start to adopt AI in reasonable and tangible ways. I think, I both agree that, these are large changes, but they need to be done sort of incrementally and strategically. And so that really is the focus that I have, working, yes, with higher ed, yes, with healthcare, but also increasingly with marketing agencies themselves to help them with the transition over into AI.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. And thank you so much for being my partner in crime for these episodes. Hopefully you and me are still friends by the end of 2026.
Hey, even if we're not, Aby, we'll act like we are. It's okay.
Yes, there you go. There we go. Right. So today's episode, we're going to get into the top 10 shifts that CMOs and marketing leaders need to plan for in 2026 and beyond. And since you mentioned agencies, Matt, earlier, the very first sort of shift is the CMO and the agency relationships, which are going to fundamentally change. And I know, Matt, you were going to speak at the Marketing AI Institute's agency summit coming up on February 12th. But unpack this topic for us. What do you think? How do you think this relationship is going to change? And let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a topic super near and dear to my heart. The change, and those who are watching here today are already feeling it, but this change is well on its way to happening, and there are lots of factors that are driving it. But one of the primary things that I'm seeing in terms of how the relationship is changing is that increasingly, I think clients are expecting their agencies, one, to have AI capability, expertise, knowledge, and experience, but also to invite them in to that learning process and help the clients understand really how to start utilizing AI in their own businesses. And one of the interesting things that I've seen is, agencies are adopting AI at different rates. Some have, gone really far down an adoption path. Others are just getting started. And those who are just getting started feel a little reticence to act as if they are experts in AI for their clients. And yet the clients are expecting some guidance. And so the relationship there to me is very different in that, agencies are used to being the experts in these things. They're used to leading their clients through strategy, through brand, through creative, all of the many things that agencies provide. And in this case, actually, agencies in some cases are still learning themselves what AI does and how it can benefit their businesses. And so it changes the nature really of the relationship between agencies and clients, and that it's not, hey, I'm the expert and I'm going to train you and teach you. It's we're learning as an agency. Let's learn together. Let's give you the expertise that we can provide. Let's help you learn about what this means for your business. So that's one of the major shifts that I'm seeing. Another one is coming from a lot of the large holding companies who have invested literally hundreds of millions of dollars in their own AI platforms and are bringing the capabilities of those AI platforms directly to their clients. One of the examples in the last few months is WPP in their Open platform. A few months ago, they announced that they were starting to invite their clients into the Open platform, allowing clients to actually do creative and strategy within that platform. And WPP acting really in that instance as an expert and as a guide in that technology, but not necessarily having to do all the creative work. And then even just last week, WPP Open unveiled an agent hub, which is really meant, again, to sort of put the power in the hands of clients with some highly trained agents. And so the nature of that relationship is really different. And what I think is really critical for CMOs going forward is to engage your agencies, understand how they're using AI, where they are in their journey, and, come to them as a collaborator and, not expect necessarily that they're going to have all of the answers to all of the AI questions, but figure out how to partner with each other in really exciting ways. And the last thing that I would say is, to me, the big shift here is that AI is really putting a greater emphasis and focus on human strategy, creativity, and expertise. And so the more that CMOs can really focus on helping their team members and their agencies provide that expertise and that humanity, I think the more effective they're going to end up being.
Yeah, no, very, very true. I almost feel that there is so much pressure for brands to bring some of the work in-house and leverage AI as opposed to agencies. I mean, as we work with clients who have explicit goals for actually not, continuing on with their agencies because AI can do some of that production-oriented work internally. Are you seeing that as well? And how should CMOs sort of deal with that?
Yeah, I definitely have seen that. And I think there's, it depends on the organization, right? There are, obviously, we know, right? There are marketing organizations. You and I have worked very closely with one that has a really mature internal marketing function and capability. And, I would encourage those large, complex, very capable internal marketing agencies to really double down, invest in their people, invest in training and education and technology, and really build up that internal muscle, to continue to build the capabilities and value of their internal team. But if you are relying on agencies on the outside, again, I would really encourage you to have open conversations with either agencies that you're working with or thinking about working with to really understand how they're looking at AI, how they're utilizing it. Everybody is calling themselves an AI expert out there today. And I think, CMOs really owe it to themselves and to their teams and their organizations to really understand if the agencies truly do understand these technologies, or whether it's more lip service. So ask some of the tough questions. Doesn't mean you have to, reject them if they're not already experts. But I do think there's value in really understanding what's real and, what's, lip service at this point.
I think you and me could have a dedicated episode just to this one topic, but Matt, tell our listeners a little bit about this session that you're doing with the Marketing AI Institute.
Yeah, thanks. It is February 12th, as you mentioned. It is an all-day event being put on by our friends at the Marketing AI Institute, also increasingly being called SmarterX. And for those of you who have ever been to MACON, which is the annual Marketing AI conference in Cleveland in the fall, this is that same organization. Paul Reitzer, Mike Kaput, Kathy McPhillips, just a really incredible team. And this event is a free event, and it's going to have a variety of talks from Paul and Mike and our friend Will Reynolds, among others, who are going to be talking about the impact of AI on agencies specifically. And my talk is going to be about AI agents. I'm going to be doing a little bit of demonstration work, showing a couple of real agents that I've created and how agencies can use them today to help with their, with the work that they're doing for themselves and for their clients, but also really setting the context for what's happening with AI agents. I think you and I hear that buzzword all the time, and there's a lot of confusion about what they really are and what they're really capable of. And so part of what I'm going to do is unpack what's possible with agents today and where they're headed. So if you haven't signed up yet, folks, it's a free event, and would love to have you join us.
That was very cool, Matt. Good luck. I will be tuning in. All right. What is next on our list?
Well, a minute ago, Aby, you mentioned brand, right? And I think in the age of AI, brand is so important. I would love to hear your perspective on brand discovery in the rise of generative search. So much has changed in this area. Would love to hear how you're thinking about it.
That is one topic that you can run, but you cannot hide today. GEO, LEO, AEO, EIO, I don't know what to call it. All of those things are legitimate. But really, at the heart of the issue is that users are increasingly skipping traditional search altogether and are going straight to LLMs, to your chat GPTs and Claudes and Perplexities to really get more synthesized sort of quote unquote cooked answers, which are amalgamated from these various sources to really learn more about, your brand and your product, and are then using that for decision making. Not only that, I think LLMs are also getting embedded inside of products. I mean, most notably Alexa and Siri, soon to have ChatGPT. All of these things is just going to sort of amplify the effect, right? For LLMs to be embedded and be sort of used as a primary interface for folks to starting to find things. And that is a stark change from the days of people Googling for stuff and you being served up with the 10 blue links on page one and you're trying to find things. And really, for the first time, I feel that marketers and CMOs and brand managers are going to struggle with really making sure that they are not in control of their narratives, right? So in the traditional way, you would search for something, it would come up on Google, you would click on the link, go to your website, and now you're in control of that narrative. You can now position your brand, say anything about your brand in whichever way makes sense, but that is no longer the case now because LLMs are taking data from your website, from third-party sources, and all those sort of things, and serving it up. So a completely different paradigm. I mean, don't get me wrong, Google is still dominating the search, like in terms of the pie chart, if you will, but that number is changing dramatically fast, right? And not only that, I feel that the conversions that are happening from LLMs to decision points is those conversions are much more faster and more authoritative when it comes from LLMs versus, traditionally Google. So whole other sort of paradigm and whole other way of really thinking about that. And I think from a CMO standpoint, I feel, every CMO should really in 2026 focus on kind of three things when it comes to this. So the first is start at ground zero and really understand, audit, and monitor how your brand is being represented today, right? In the LLMs, both in terms of coverage and in terms of sentiment, right? There's ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google AI, overview, excuse me. There's a lot of that stuff. And there is a whole host of tools So we follow along pretty closely, and that market has exploded. I feel like there's a new tool. 2 years ago, there were 3 tools, and now there's, lots of tools. We keep track of them, but increasingly hard to do that. But some of the prominent ones are Evertune or Profound and Gumshoe, Revere. These are some of the common ones where you can really plug in your brand and then see how these LLMs are kind of representing you in terms of share of voice and then sentiment, right? And these are all of these tools provide that information based on just random sampling of your brand within the LLM. So that's number one. The second thing is make sure that in addition, yes, for a lot of brand folks and CMOs, you're focused on SEO, but also make sure that your website is AI readable, right? So there's specific methodologies of how to write key pages in a vernacular that is understandable by these LLMs. Make sure that the schema models that most websites should have had all this time, and a lot of them don't, or people ignore them, now are playing a really important role in how these LLMs sort of synthesize your website. So obviously not getting into the weeds in this podcast, but it is widely documented, lots of conjecture and a lot of sort of ideas on how your website should really be made, AI readable, and what's the impact of that in terms of content strategy, right? Like how do you write in a manner which is suitable for humans, but also you're giving LLMs what's the information that they can grab and include in their answers as people are trying to look for things. And then finally, I feel it's a great time for PR folks because, LLMs are obviously, Google was indexing your website, and but now LLMs is taking not only your website, but also taking all these third-party sources, right? So obviously you have the prominent ones, the Wikipedias, the Reddits, and the Quoros of the world, but then there's a lot of these third-party websites where LLMs are synthesizing that information to really understand how authoritatively is your brand speak to those, whatever that topic area may be. And that has a big influence in how AI describes your brand. So those are some of the things that, if you're a marketing leader, you should be doing, and making sure that, you're really looking very closely at brand discovery, now that people are increasingly looking at LLMs for these answers.
Yeah, it's such a huge shift that is taking place right now. Quick follow-on question to that, Aby. You talked about the importance of the website and how to make content AI readable. You and I both have seen clients see pretty precipitous drop-offs in website traffic. Should CMOs be freaking out right now about the traffic that's disappearing from their sites?
The way I really think about it is, as long as that drop off is in alignment with the general industry trends, you shouldn't be freaking out. But if generally speaking, people are seeing Google referral traffic drop off by 30-40%, in your traffic that is like 90%, then yeah, so you should be worried about that. Not only that, I think there is increasingly, I feel web traffic is becoming almost like a vanity metric. It's making sure that you are attracting the right people, the right traffic, which would then, obviously, the goal would be to convert that traffic. So again, different ways of thinking about it. In general, can't ignore brand discovery on LLMs. Number 3 in our top 10 list is agents. Now, you had mentioned agents earlier. There is this, dramatic shift. We've been talking about agents for a while, but I think there's a dramatic shift from agents being, almost like helpers, quote unquote, co-pilots. I don't mean the Microsoft co-pilot, but true sort of assistants, if you will. But from there to kind of workflow owners or workflow co-owners, Matt. You take any major platform, Adobe, HubSpot, Salesforce. You can't talk about Salesforce without hearing about Agentforce these days, but there's a lot of that. But break it down for us in terms of what does that really mean, and how should CMOs really think about that for 2026?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I blame Matthew McConaughey for the AI agent situation that we are in right now. The aforementioned Salesforce Agentforce hype has been that drum has been beating so loud now for well over a year. And McConaughey and Woody Harrelson are very happy to sell us agents. But the fact of the matter is that really agents are, in many cases, really not yet ready for prime time. They are getting better, they are getting more capable, but they are far from infallible, and certainly not set it and forget it. In fact, I just read a study this morning that talked about the fact that there are people in the AI world who believe that agents will never be 100% capable of completing tasks successfully on their own. Now, whether that proves out or not, who knows? But from my own experience, having built a number of agents for clients and for myself, I can tell you, and I know you've experienced the same thing, that these things are not simple. They require a lot of clarity, a lot of focus in what you're building and how you're building it, and what you expect to come out of it. And it certainly, as I said a moment ago, is not set it and forget it. You have to really pay attention to what's coming out of these agents. So the big thing to me in this area is, yes, there is enormous potential here, and you talked about this ability for them to really own entire workflows. That to me is absolutely possible. And there are examples of that already working well. And that really is, in my mind, the future, which is how do we string these agents together in a way that lets them do what they're really good at individually so that collectively they become exponentially more powerful. The goal to me, if you're a CMO or a marketing leader of any kind today, is really understand where AI agents can add value. Be clear in what you're building, how you're building it, what you want those agents to accomplish. Have proper expectations for what's truly possible with them today, but find some of those workflows of things that your team is doing that are, maybe, not great for humans to be focusing on, and allow the AI agents to do some of that work, so that your human employees can really focus on what they're best at, which is creativity and strategy and human discernment, all those really important things. And so, yes, lean into agents, find opportunities, but they are no magic bullet, and certainly require some heavy lifting to get them going and to make them successful.
Do you think 2026 is going to be the year of the AI agents, as a lot of people claim it would be?
Well, I think 25 was supposed to be the year of AI agents. So I think if we keep pushing if we keep moving the goalposts, we'll get there eventually. I think this is the year of AI agent reality setting in. What I would say is that it's, I think what we're coming to is this moment of really understanding that AI agents specifically, but AI in general is not magic, right? It's not like you can wave a wand and it's going to solve something for you. It requires work. It requires planning. It requires forethought. It requires investment of time, energy, and money. All of those things, I think, are leading to this moment of like, okay, there's enormous potential here, but we really have to invest in making this happen. And so do I think that this could be the year where we get real value from agents? Yes, 100%. And in fact, I'm working on a project with AI agents very much at the center. And so I'm very hopeful that this will be the year of AI agents. But I think there's, again, that reality setting in of we have more work to do to get the real value that's possible here.
So you're saying that in the future, I can have a Matt agent do the podcast with me. I don't need to work with you. And
yes,
that would be
exactly. Yep. I will record an avatar and you will not have to deal with me directly ever again, Aby, I promise. So I've got a topic for you. This is something I know is near and dear to your heart, having worked with you closely on client work. Interested in your view of how AI really is accelerating the creative side of things, right? We've all seen massive strides in images and video and audio and all the many things. But where is this headed? And, what should CMOs be thinking about? How do they sort of parse through all the many moving parts here?
I know. I mean, just the advances in 2025, the advances in video generation and image creation have just been phenomenal, right? Notwithstanding if you've seen any on Instagram or TikTok, you've seen the Maduro and Trump dance. Notwithstanding that, I would say the impact of all of these models has just been phenomenal, right? Our image models like the Nano Banana producing like high fidelity imagery. And then you have, VO3, Google VO3, Sora, Kling. There's so many of these tools where you can really now create, ad films. Brands are already doing ad films, and people are creating documentaries and moving towards full length, movies. And it's pretty evident, especially given movie studios and these video model providers. Has been sort of a kind of a merger of sorts where there is definitely movie studios see tremendous potential in this, in this technology. And this is not something that is limited to, smaller brands and people tinkering around with it. This is clearly being adopted by more and more brands. And, a great example of that was, Coca-Cola. So they produced their 2025 holiday campaign. And then they released, interestingly, a behind the scenes video, which I think they used Notebook LM to do the audio for that video. So AI again. But they sort of shared what their process was. And essentially, it was a team of about 5 specialists who generated and refined about 70,000 video clips in 30 days by using AI to design the realism, the motion, the brand details up front instead of fixing some of these things later in post-production. So essentially the post-production overhead became almost like a pre-production exercise for them to create all these video clips, which was then kind of used in the final, commercial. And that shift sort of turns the process where you can start to rapidly iterate, right? As opposed to a traditional, slower, linear process. So really, I feel this is game changing. And there is a lot of video slop that you see on all these channels. I mean, Sora, that is the, slop central when it comes to video. But of course, even on Instagram and TikTok and also social media, you'll see a lot of this stuff. But really, for serious applications, I think this is becoming, a serious contender, AI generated video and imagery. And, for CMOs, I feel, what does this really mean for them? So this means, like, from a creative standpoint, it is your creative process and imagination and storytelling is not limited by production or production budgets, right? And so anybody can do anything, but I think for CMOs, what this really means is there is an obligation to sort of set the guardrails. The next thing is for CMOs, speed becomes an advantage, right? So you should really invest in workflows and model access and things like that, and not focus on the actual asset because the asset is just a one-time thing, but focus on sort of institutional systems to kind of go along with the guardrails that I referenced earlier, so that you have the ability to create assets in kind of an accelerated fashion where speed can truly become an advantage while you're staying on brand. And then you can have guardrails, you'll have speed, and then that increases so that scale that comes as a result of that will really has the potential of increasing your brand risk, right? You don't want a situation where, yes, it's super easy and you can do it on a dime, but now you're creating things that is going to put your brand on risk. So that's where I feel something near and near to your heart, human in the loop. You want to make sure humans are in charge of taste, right? That's where, make sure you're assigning your senior creative people to really approve your, creative direction, and, making sure that this brand is consistent and storytelling is authentic to your brand values and those sort of things, which are really hard to pull off with AI. So AI can really help with accelerate production, remove the barriers in terms of, production budgets and whatever. Like, I had a client who wanted to create a a commercial for their brand. It was a B2C brand where they wanted the environment to be on Mars, 4 prompts, and that's easily attainable. So think about that. It's pretty wild compared to what it could have been. Not that they were sending a crew to Mars, but just the fact that that was their idea, right? That's how they wanted their brand represented, and they wanted to be done in sort of a brand compliant manner is pretty incredible, right? So all those constraints are disappearing, and I feel that sort of a human factor of taste and judgment, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, is such a crucial aspect of it. Moving on to number 5. So I want to talk a little bit about MarTech, right? So with marketing, in the world of marketing, now that we have AI, there's a real opportunity for marketing departments to truly leverage all of their systems, which have historically been sort of disconnected point solutions. Now, yes, they may be integrations and whatever, but they're still sort of point-to-point integrations. But I feel AI will increasingly allow for these systems to be connected so that marketing leaders and CMOs can really think of that almost holistically. What do you think about that, and what is your take?
You asked a minute ago whether I thought 26 would be the year of the AI agent. I actually think 2026 may be the year of AI as infrastructure, because what I'm seeing and what you're experiencing with your clients is exactly what you just mentioned, right? Which is a lot of point solutions, right? I need something that does media planning and buying, or I need something that helps me analyze my data, or I need something that helps me be more effective from a project management perspective. And it's that classic tale of buying a bunch of different tools for individual needs, where what's really needed is a sort of systems approach and thinking about how all of these things come together, or should come together for maximum benefit. Because I think right now AI is in such a shiny object syndrome place that it makes sense. People are like, oh, I need to get into the AI ring here. But the truth is that almost every technology that folks are using now has got some AI in it somewhere, somehow. And what I think you and I have both seen in our client work is that a lot of clients are not even aware that the technologies they're already paying for have AI capability. And so, I always recommend that people start with understanding what's going on in their current environment. What AI capabilities are currently there, what gaps are already being filled, and what, if anything, is left over in terms of gaps that need to be filled that maybe then you need to buy another technology to fill in. But increasingly, I think what's going to be happening here in the coming year and beyond is that these technologies are going to start communicating with each other. If you're familiar with Anthropic, they're the maker of the Claude LLM. They last year, actually late 2024, released what they call their Model Context Protocol, or MCP. And MCP really is essentially a way for AI systems to talk to one another in an easy, much more streamlined way than sort of traditional, digital, integrations. And these MCP servers are increasingly being found across technologies. For example, I use HubSpot as my CRM for my business, and Claude has a direct integration with HubSpot that allows me to essentially, through natural language, speak to my HubSpot database. That is done through an MCP connection. And so these technologies working together is going to become something that makes life a lot easier, and it reduces the burden of sort of traditional tech implementations and integrations. And I think there's just an enormous amount of power and potential there.
Should CMOs think about technologies differently, MarTech differently moving forward?
So I think they should be thinking about technologies from a problem solution mindset, right? And I think probably most CMOs are doing this already anyway. But I think AI again has been this shiny object. Let's go buy the magic trick. That I think there's been a lack of understanding of this is just technology at the end of the day. Right. And just like any other technology, you're making a decision on purchase based on specific business needs. And so I would just invite CMOs to step back and say, not necessarily, hey, let's go get the latest AI technology, but instead, let's understand what we're currently paying for, whether we're getting maximum value out of that, do an evaluation really of our workflow. And if there are things along the way that can be benefited from AI, then certainly fill that gap. But I would take a much more holistic and a much more stepwise approach to it than a lot of what I think we're seeing so far. Another topic near and dear to your heart, something you and I have worked on with a client, is in the advertising and paid media space. And there's obviously an enormous amount of disruption that's taking place in the media platform area. I'd love to just hear your thoughts on both where we are today, but also really where we're headed in 26 and beyond, and what CMOs should be thinking about in this really critical but fast-moving area.
I think what this sort of, I'm going to talk about two things. So one is paid media platforms are letting AI do more of the work and not just help with tasks. And this has been going on for a while in the form of machine learning and that sort of stuff, Google Performance Max or PMax as folks call it, and Meta's got Meta Advantage Plus and so on. And a lot of these tools are already automating, targeting, bidding, placements, creative combinations across channels and things like that. And there are these whole sort of AI native tools like Albert AI out of Israel, where they can sort of independently optimize campaigns across platforms using AI signals. So that's one. That's the current landscape where all of these paid media platforms are moving. On top of that, the advertising landscape itself is moving into sort of our AI answer environments. Like recently, OpenAI actively announced that they're testing ads inside of ChatGPT, and Google's doing the same thing, and I'm sure all these LLMs are doing the same thing. Right, it was just a matter of time that they would monetize it, and yes, they would do it gracefully, and things would be labeled, and there would be choices and exceptions and all those sort of things. But advertising is going to move into LLM answers as well. So from a CMO standpoint, what does that really mean? So I think the way I really think about it is sort of threefold. So first is, you know, shift from kind of campaign control to almost input control. What do I mean by that? So assume that all your paid media platforms like PMax and what have you and Albert will leverage increasingly will leverage AI to optimize automatically. So really focus on the quality of the audiences, creative inputs, and kind of the conversion data that you feed them to make sure that AI is doing its job well. So give it the right input and let AI do sort of some of these automations when it comes to campaign control, right? Obviously, test and iterate and see if that is working well. But I think that's where it already is in a lot of ways, and it's going to be increasingly getting to a point where you and me can just go in and saying, "Hey, these are the type of people I want to reach in natural language, and based on that, here's my services. This is what I want to sell," and then let these platforms are going to start generating ads and try to reduce the friction as much as possible for folks to start advertising. So that's number one. Number two, I feel, again, this is already happening, but I feel the emphasis of AI enablement when it comes to creative. There's going to be more emphasis on that, in a way that you want that creative to be modular, right? So you're going to be able to provide headlines and visuals and video clips and call to actions and links and all these things to your AI, and let AI assemble it in the right combination with the right guardrails so that the right message reaches the right audience in the correct context to maximize your conversions and ROAS, right? Mm-hmm. So that modularity of creative becomes super important. So you're not thinking of ad units as sort of independent units, but almost like components, which then you can let AI assemble and deliver to the audiences, the intended audience, in some sort of a automated manner. And then at the end of the day, you want to make sure that all this is great, but you got to reassert that accountability through measurement. And that's where you got to make sure that your You're using the right kind of data. You're doing your incremental testing, business outcomes, the right kind of KPIs to make sure that AI-based automation is clearly driving value and is just not platform level efficiency. In other words, make sure that you are getting the output of why you are doing that paid advertising, in the first place. So don't focus on vanity KPIs, focus on business outcome KPIs and hold AI accountable. Mm-hmm. That's sort of a different way of thinking about it. And like I said, none of these things, people who are deep in the world of, paid media, these things should resonate with them because these things have already been happening over the last couple of years, I'd say. And I just think there's going to be more and more of this.
Yeah. It reminds me, Aby, when you and I were talking with the CEO of Albert, this was probably, 8 or 10 months ago at this point. And one of the things that he said really has stuck with me. And it's very much around this idea of how much and how completely this field is changing. I remember I asked him, I said, what makes Albert most successful? Like what scenarios are the best for Albert in order to be successful for a team? And he said, the ideal scenario is to turn Albert on, train it, give it a clear strategy and guardrails, and then leave it alone and let it learn and act on its own. And you're going to end up having probably a more successful campaign at the end of that. And I think that's completely the opposite of what most marketers would be comfortable with today. Do you have just a quick thought on how marketers can become comfortable with that change of power structure?
It's going to be as a result of sort of testing. And I mean, nothing succeeds like success. So I think it would be that incrementality where you trust AI, you let it play with it. So that's the paradigm that you provide the goals, set the guardrails, give it a little bit of budget to go play with it. And then you see the outcomes and you see that, hey, compare that to what your kind of human paid media specialists are doing and how is AI doing, do that comparison and see the areas that it excels. So I think AI is going to have to earn that trust. It's not going to be set it and forget it sort of thing. It's real money at the end of the day. So you don't want a situation that your budgets are blown just because you trusted AI and AI did not deliver. So I think that it's going to be an evolution, but to me, it's inevitable where you're going to get to a point where AI is going to really handle all the grunt work. And then the input that the humans are going to provide is audience goals, modular ad elements, and expected business outcomes, and then let AI do its own thing. So, and then obviously, like I said, make sure that you're holding AI accountable from a measurement and analytics standpoint. So that is sort of a key output that you want to make sure that humans are holding AI accountable for.
Yeah, and I love that what you just said about AI needs to earn the trust, and I think that's sort of can be generalized across everything related to AI today. So that's good stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about analytics, because that's to me is one of those things which is so key in all aspects of marketing. So I always joke about it. I love an inner SQL join said no marketer ever. So marketers want insights, they want data, but historically that process has been, not very marketing friendly. You got your data sources and you got your, data warehouses and data pipelines and then, dashboards, and all the whole sort of process is very traditionally IT oriented, whereas marketers really want insights on what to do when it comes to campaign execution and what not to do, or understand their audiences better. And I feel that AI is really changing the way marketers are consuming these insights to where now you can quote unquote talk to your data, like you mentioned in your case.
Yep.
When you were talking about HubSpot and Claude earlier, and then that's one part of it. Natural language, talk to your data to extract insights, but then also for a lot of marketers, the holy grail is not only understanding what is happening, but understanding the why, the narrative. And I feel that both of those things are getting opened up on account of AI and the AI's ability to analyze all this information. What do you think? Do you agree with that?
I do, yeah. And I would say that I've got good news and I've got bad news for you here, Aby, when it comes to marketing analytics. But the bad news that I would say is that this is not going to be easy for most marketers today, right? That to really get greater value from your data is not going to be the proverbial, push of a button or flip of a switch. And it comes back to something you mentioned a moment ago, which is that there's all these data sources and there's historical performance and communication, systems that don't communicate with each other. And so I think for a lot of marketers, they've got kind of a hot mess of data. And as nice as it would be to just be able to say, like, let's go get more value from all this data, the bad news, or at least the truth and the reality of it, is that there's a lot of work that needs to happen in terms of data hygiene and cleaning in order to get that value. The good news is that I think we really are close to being able to get exponential value from the data that we're all sitting on top of because of the power of AI. But it requires that upfront work and labor of cleaning the data, getting everything into a consistent format, and then, and I think only then, will you start to really get that exponential value. You mentioned, the idea of talking to the data, and I talked about my MCP connector experience between HubSpot and Claude. And for me, it was this sort of eye-opening moment where I connected Claude literally through the toggle of a switch within the Claude interface to my HubSpot database. I had to give it some permissions of what it could and could not look at. But once Claude was in my my HubSpot database, it really was able to give me different kinds of insights and value than I was able to get otherwise. In fact, I asked it just as a test. I said, go into my HubSpot database and give me a list of my top 10 most engaged prospects. And that's all I asked it to do. I was purposely very general and generic with what I was asking. And what Claude did was go into my HubSpot database, evaluated everybody in my, in my database, and created a top 10 list of my most engaged prospects based on website visits, email opens, all the usual, metrics of engagement. So created or looked at all those data, but not only that, it actually created a scoring system on its own. It then scored and ranked my prospects based on their interactions with me. And then it created a custom marketing plan for each and every one of those specific individuals based on their interactions with me. So the point about, the data being a powerful tool that we're all sitting on, it just needs a little bit of an unlock, is, that we can truly start to understand the motivations at a more granular individual human level of the folks that we're interacting with and that we're trying to market to. And so I think, if folks can invest time and energy in cleaning their data, but then really starting to understand or think about strategic ways to benefit from the data in new ways, I think the potential there is just enormous.
I am super excited about, this one aspect of it, because as much as I love data and insights, I just don't like the sausage making portion of it. So
Right.
this is super exciting and kind of near and dear to me.
Probably most of the folks who are listening to this podcast have heard about ChatGPT Atlas or Perplexity Comet, or these AI enabled browsers that are have become increasingly popular in the last maybe 3 to 6 months. So I would really love to hear your perspective on them. Have you used them? What are they good at? What are they not good at? And what are some of the watch outs that folks should be aware of?
Love this one. I have played a lot with ChatGPT Atlas. So essentially what is happening is, AI is moving sort of up the chain into the browser layer and really changing the way how people explore the web. So like ChatGPT Atlas, for those of you who have not played with it, would highly recommend you play with it. It really acts like an agent. You can delegate that task for it to go sort of navigate things, click around, give it a goal, and it is going to do it for you. And this is something that we've played with it directly inside of Spark Novus, where we give it, a blog, or we give it a copy of a blog post and then have it go actually post the blog on the website, right? Not publish it, but post it in draft post so we can have a human in the loop. And it works really well. Now, is it 100% perfect? Does it get stuck sometimes? Yes, it does. But to me, it's pretty incredible where you can just upload your your blog copy, log into your CMS, give it a task of going to post it. Obviously, your instructions provides it details and what to do and where to click on and that sort of thing. But I can just do that, go, grab a cup of coffee, come back, and it is done for you. So that is pretty incredible. And then you have another one, Comet. So there's all of these tools. I'm sure, Google has Disco, which is a little bit different. Microsoft, let's not even talk about those guys. But there is just a lot of opportunity. And, what this really means is think about the future. This means that we should all assume that AI sits between us and, the user. So us, in this case, brands. So you have brands and then you have users, and AI browsers and agents are increasingly going to read, summarize, and filter your content before a human ever visits your website. Think about it. This is already happening in the email. Like if you're getting email, whether it's Gmail or Microsoft Office or whatever, you have those little AI summaries unless you've turned them off. You'll have the AI summaries up there where sometimes, I don't know about you, I'm still reading the full emails, but I'll definitely glance, at the summary in some cases. I think extrapolate that to your web browsing experience, we're going to get to a point where you start relying on your browsers to summarize all this information. So that has profound implications from a brand standpoint because you suddenly have brands with, again, website presence, whether it comes to, creative or narrative or whatever that sometimes, users will never see. So how do you deal with that reality? The second thing is you have to make sure that the message on your website is sort of survives that interpretability of AI, right? You want to make sure you structure your content in a way that positions your offerings, it allows for differentiation, it provides proof points from, those sort of things, and it makes it friendly for AI-based browsers to provide that information to the people who are browsing it. And then finally, we are going to get to a world which I think is going to be a whole new industry where you are going to have websites which need to be made agent friendly. So we all have to prepare for agent first interaction models where, as agent driven interfaces sort of mature and there's early protocols for AGUI, which are already sort of taking shape, where brands need to make sure that the website usability, which was all driven off of, human usability and the ability for humans to interact with your website in an easy sort of way, is going to be appended because now they need to be usable by AI agents. In fact, in my experiments where we had, ChatGPT Atlas postings. Some website controls, it got stuck because some website controls are not conducive for, agents to go interact with it. A human had to interact with it, right? But I think increasingly we're going to see more and more of that. And I think all our websites are going to have to cater to that. Right. So again, they're completely different paradigm as AI based or agentic based browsers are gonna be proliferate, and it's just inevitable. And I think there's going to be more of that before the end of the year.
Yeah, and it is a fascinating thing to watch these browsers work on your behalf. And again, to your point, I would really encourage folks to get out there and give these a try.
Number 9, Matt. This is a very interesting one where marketing leaders are going to have to manage humans and AI systems or AI agents, right? As part of some people say as part of their org charts, right?
Yep.
And so, what is your take? What is your take on that, and what does that mean in terms of future marketing orgs?
It's, to me, what's fascinating about this is that the idea of AI employees, it's already here. I've got a client who already has AI employees on their org chart reporting into human beings. Those AI employees have very clear tasks that they're responsible for, very clear KPIs that they are being held to. And they're sitting right alongside other human beings on the org chart. And so the people who are leading these organizations are increasingly having to think, down two very different paths. One is the traditional human path of management and motivation and, empathy and, maximizing potential and all of those things. And the other is, managing technology to a set of very clear expectations and goals. And as we think about AI agents, you talked earlier about sort of running workflows beginning to end. That's really where a lot of this is going to be going, which is you're going to have agents that are living in the org chart that are responsible for things. And whether it's the CMO or the marketing leader or a marketing manager is going to be responsible for making sure that AI agent does its job. And if it doesn't do its job, it sounds strange, but you're going to have to fire that agent and create a new one so that it actually does what it's supposed to do in the way that it's supposed to do it. And so it's just a really different way of thinking about managing of resources. Motivation and management become very, very different things when you're, bifurcate between a human and a machine. And I think marketers certainly have sort of a technological bent to them very often. But I think there's going to need to be a real push for marketers to understand these technologies at a deeper level, specifically because they're going to be asked to manage them and their outputs, right? No longer can you just sort of outsource the knowledge and understanding of these technologies to the IT team, for example. You need to really understand what makes these technologies work and not work, so that you can manage them effectively and help them, have them help you accomplish your organizational goals. So, to me, as we look forward to the rest of 2026 and beyond, it's really about leaders understanding the different ways to manage resources in the most general sense, human and machine. But I think really critically around trust. And I know this is a topic you're going to talk about here in a moment. But I think we all know that AI is not in a place yet where it can just be trusted to do the right thing and to do it well and to do it repeatedly well. And so these managers who are guiding these technologies and these humans really need to know when to trust automation and when not to trust automation. It's a different kind of a skill set. It's a different kind of a mindset. I think it's really exciting and interesting, but it will take a, sort of a different approach to management for sure.
One sort of follow-up question for you is, technologies have existed, right, in the world of marketing and all functions for that matter, right? What makes AI agents different in a manner that we are all sort of anthropomorphizing it? So that whole thing is a little bit different, right? Like, so in your mind, what is triggering that?
Yeah, I think it's exactly because these agents are increasingly capable of doing things without us, right? You talked about that a moment ago, that these are, these technologies are increasingly capable of running on their own. I actually just saw an article yesterday about a company that enabled AI agent-driven web browsers, and as a test, allowed them to run entirely independently for a full week. And this got to all sorts of things, not least of which, of course, is how long are these AI agents able to operate on their own? But really, like, what are we handing over to them, right? And so I think we're in this moment of saying, okay, these agents are capable of doing things, increasingly doing things on their own. What are we going to give them to do on their own? And what are we going to make sure that we as humans are still very firmly in control of? But I think there's also this natural human, interest in just sort of giving over a task to someone, right? Think about when you have a human intern, right? You're like, okay, I need you to go and create this report for me, right? And so you give that intern an assignment and she goes out and she does that work for you and she brings something back to you. And I think we're increasingly seeing AI and AI agents as interns who are sending out to do work on our behalf. And I think that the more we think of them in that way, the more we get comfortable, perhaps a little bit too soon, get comfortable with letting them just do stuff on their own. And so I think that constant balance of pushing the technology to see what it's capable of, but also maintaining that very human in the loop moment of we're not just going to have this thing go off and do it itself. I think that really is at the sort of core of how we're trying to come to grips with where this is all headed.
All right. Home stretch here, Matt.
Yeah, Aby, we have arrived at number 10. And this is, again, this is an area that is very near and dear to my heart, which is human judgment. And I'm interested in your point of view on what is the role of human judgment going forward? Are there limitations? Are there benefits? How should we be thinking about that human in the loop?
This is just so critical. So we save the best for last, right? Where I think AI is removing constraints around speed and scale and execution, really around all marketing functions and across kind of everything: content, media, analytics, optimization, ads, all the things we spoke about, up until now. And so the limiting factor for marketers is no longer production. It could be data, but I feel the limiting factor is really going to be human judgment and taste. And that is what is going to drive, what is right, what is wrong, and what are things that marketing team should never ship. From a CMO standpoint, I feel that decision quality becomes the constraint. You want to make sure that when AI can generate endless content, endless whatever, fill in the blanks, the real bottleneck shifts to the marketing leaders in deciding, what is in alignment with their brand values. So decision quality is a key constraint, right? Number two, I feel, and I just referenced it, but taste and judgment, right, will start to matter, more than throughput. Can I go to ChatGPT today or whatever, LLM or content technology of my choice, and have it pump out 365 blogs, a blog for every day that I could post on the website? Of course I can. And it's going to take, maybe 5 minutes to pump that out. But that's where taste and judgment will start to matter, because now I have to obviously read it and understand it and make sure it's in alignment with my brand voice and my brand values, and it makes sense to the ICP and all those sort of things. And even if you can provide all those things as input, it still requires that uniquely human quality of I don't know how to explain it, feeling or gut feel that when you read something, you want to make sure that taste and judgment is in alignment with your brand and your value system. Finally, I feel like governance becomes a strategic pillar, right? So CMOs are going to spend less time in managing execution. They should not spend a lot of time in managing execution, but more time in setting principles and guardrails and escalation pathways and everything when AI output needs that human intervention. And honestly, I feel that one is so important because human beings can be inherently lazy. Like marketing teams have a lot of things to do. And just because the last 3 times your AI generated on brand blogs doesn't mean it's going to do it for the 4th time. It can still hallucinate. It can still make things up. So you got to make sure you have the guardrails and the processes and the inherent systems which will, protect your brand from getting hurt. And that would be the underlying responsibilities of the marketing leaders and CMOs. So I feel like human judgment is going to end up becoming that bottleneck, and it's going to require CMOs and leaders to really not think only in terms of production of volume and speed and scale, but also in making sure that those things make sense. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So I know this is near and dear to you. So what do you think about this?
I love that. And it's interesting. I've spent a lot of time lately thinking about a flipping of the script, right? We talk an awful lot about, where can we use AI in our business to be more effective, more efficient, more whatever, creative, more productive. But to me, increasingly what I'm seeing out in the world and what I'm feeling in my own business is that script is now being flipped to the point where the that unique human set of qualities and capabilities. To your point, you called it, a bottleneck. I look at it as a real positive to say, let's let the AI handle the things that it can handle, and let's elevate the human qualities that matter so much in these relationships. You talk about taste, right? Taste is enormous, right? We can all tell the difference when something is AI generated. It lacks a soul, it lacks a purpose, it lacks, a humanity that we all inherently want. And I think the flipping of this to the focus on the human and all those great qualities that humans have is one of the big changes I think that's going to start happening in 2026 and beyond. And again, allowing that AI to have its place, but using it as a way to elevate the human qualities that make such a difference in the field of marketing.
That was a great note to end this episode on, Matt. Thank you very much. To our listeners, thank you very much for listening in. We really hope that this has been a spark for learning. And if you want to see past episodes, you can go to marketingaisparkcast.com. You can connect with Matt and me on LinkedIn, and would love to hear insights and commentary. We'll obviously be posting this on all our favorite podcasting platforms, and you should see some of these snippets and clips on social media. Reminder, don't forget to join Matt on February 12th at the Marketing AI Institute agency event.
Aby, wait, you have to promote your own event, which is that same day in Atlanta that day, because I will be doing the Marketing AI Institute AI for Agencies Summit. But that very same day, what's happening in the Atlanta Tech Park, Aby?
Thank you, Matt. I see you made your choice, but Marketing AI Pulse is having an event here in Atlanta. It's our quarterly in-person meeting. We have just kind of a phenomenal, event plan. We have some really, really good speakers. And, overall, I'd say that if Matt was given a choice, he would have really come to the Marketing AI Pulse event, but I will forgive him this time. But yeah, for those of you who are interested, if you're in Atlanta or around and would want to drive up, it's half a day event at Atlanta Tech Park, starting at 1:30. It goes up to 5:30. We have a happy hour at the end, but we have some phenomenal speakers. We have folks from HubSpot, from Citi, from UPS, from Coca-Cola, and a couple more brewing. So I hope you can join us. Matt, thank you very much again to join in. To our listeners, till next time, have a good one.
Thanks for listening. Big thanks to Spark Novus and the Marketing AI Pulse community. You can join the community at marketingaipulse.com.